What would you do if you saw 14 trained police dogs suddenly surround a small child in the middle of a crowded airport? Would you panic? Call for help? Or would you trust that something extraordinary was about to unfold? On November 15th, 2024, at Denver International Airport, something happened that no one could have predicted. A moment that started with confusion and fear, ended with tears of joy and a reminder of the incredible bond between humans and animals. But before I tell you what happened, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because stories like this one remind us why the world still has heroes walking among us, some of them on 4 legs. This is the story of Emma Rodriguez, a 7-year-old girl with type 1 diabetes, and Officer Jake Mitchell, the K9 handler whose quick thinking and compassion changed everything. It was supposed to be a simple family trip. Emma Rodriguez and her mother Sarah were traveling from Denver to Phoenix to visit Emma's grandmother, who had just recovered from surgery. Emma had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes just 8 months earlier, and while Sarah had become an expert at managing her daughter's condition, travel always added an extra layer of stress. They arrived at the airport 3 hours early just to be safe. Emma wore her favorite purple backpack with sparkly unicorns on it, and inside were all her diabetes supplies, her glucose monitor, insulin pens, test strips, and emergency glucose tablets. She also had her medical alert bracelet, though it was hidden under her long-sleeved shirt. Sarah had packed everything meticulously. She had letters from Emma's doctor, prescription labels, everything TSA might need to see. But what she didn't know was that her carefully organized world was about to be turned upside down. As they approached the security checkpoint, Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, I don't feel good," she whispered. Sarah's maternal instinct kicked in immediately. She knew that tone, that look in Emma's eyes. "What's wrong, sweetie? Do you feel shaky?" Emma nodded, her face pale. Sarah's heart sank. She quickly checked Emma's glucose monitor, but in the chaos of managing their luggage and getting through security, the device had somehow been packed in one of the bags that had already gone through the X-ray machine. "It's okay, baby. Let's just get through security first, and then we'll check your sugar and get you some juice. Okay?" But Emma's condition was deteriorating faster than Sarah realized. As they stood in line, Emma began to sway slightly. The fluorescent lights of the airport seemed too bright, the noise too loud. Everything was starting to blur. What happened next was a parent's worst nightmare. As Sarah tried to explain to the TSA agent that her daughter needed to sit down and that they had medical supplies in their luggage, Emma suddenly collapsed to her knees. In her confused, hypoglycemic state, she began crying and pulling away from her mother, not recognizing the danger she was in. From a distance, to untrained eyes, it looked like a completely different situation. Airport security saw a child in distress, pulling away from an adult. Standard protocols kicked in immediately. Within seconds, airport security surrounded them. Sarah tried to explain, her voice rising in panic. "She has diabetes. She needs sugar. Please let me get to our bags." But in the chaos and noise, with dozens of travelers looking on and Emma now sitting on the floor crying, the situation escalated. Someone called for additional security. Someone else called for police. And that's when Officer Jake Mitchell and the K9 unit happened to be conducting their routine patrol through Terminal B. Officer Jake Mitchell was a 15-year veteran of the Denver Police Department, but his real passion was his work with the K9 unit. For the past 7 years, he had been a handler and trainer for the airport's bomb detection and search and rescue dogs. But Jake had a secret specialty that made him different from every other handler in the department. 3 years earlier, his own daughter, Lily, had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. The diagnosis had devastated him at first, but he'd thrown himself into learning everything he could about the condition. He'd read medical journals, attended conferences, and even trained himself to recognize the signs of diabetic emergencies. More remarkably, he'd begun training some of the K9 unit's dogs, particularly those who showed aptitude for medical detection to recognize the scent of someone experiencing a diabetic episode. It was a personal project, something he did on his own time, and it wasn't officially part of their training. But Jake believed in it. On this particular day, Jake was conducting a routine training exercise with 14 dogs from the unit, some his own, some belonging to other handlers who were on break. They were practicing formation drills and scent detection in the terminal when Jake's radio crackled. "Security situation at Checkpoint 4. Possible child in distress." Jake's protective instincts kicked in immediately. "Come on, team," he called to the dogs, and they moved as one toward the checkpoint. When Jake arrived at the scene, he saw exactly what everyone else saw: a crying child, a frantic mother, security officers trying to maintain order, and a growing crowd of concerned onlookers with their phones out. But then he saw something else. Emma's medical alert bracelet had slipped out from under her sleeve. And in that instant, Jake's training and personal experience crystallized into understanding. "Diabetic emergency!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos with such authority that everyone stopped. "That child is having a hypoglycemic episode. We need sugar, now!" He pushed through the security cordon and knelt beside Emma, who was now barely conscious. "Ma'am," he said to Sarah, his voice calm but urgent. "Does she have supplies? Glucose tablets, juice?" "Yes, in our bags. They went through security." Sarah was sobbing now, relief flooding through her that someone finally understood. "Get those bags here, now!" Jake ordered the TSA agents. Then to his own dogs, "Find it. Medical. Search." What happened next was something that would be captured on dozens of cell phone cameras and security footage, going viral within hours. The 14 police dogs, responding to Jake's command and their training, formed a protective circle around Emma. It wasn't aggressive, it was protective. They sat in formation, creating a barrier between the frightened child and the crowd of onlookers, giving her space and dignity in her most vulnerable moment. Two of Jake's specially trained dogs, a German Shepherd named Bear and a Belgian Malinois named Luna, began using their noses to search through the luggage that had been brought over. Within 30 seconds, Bear pawed at Emma's purple unicorn backpack. Jake unzipped it and found the glucose tablets, but Emma was too disoriented to chew them properly. They needed liquid sugar, fast. "Does anyone have juice? Soda? Anything with sugar?" Jake called out. A flight attendant who had been watching rushed over with a bottle of apple juice from her flight crew station. Jake carefully helped Emma drink it, cradling her head while her mother held her hand, both women crying now. Sarah from relief, Emma from confusion and fear. The dogs maintained their circle, perfectly still, perfectly calm. Their presence seemed to have a settling effect on everyone. The chaos melted into hushed observation. Even the most curious onlookers stepped back, as if recognizing they were witnessing something sacred. It took about 10 minutes, the longest 10 minutes of Sarah Rodriguez's life. But gradually, Emma's color began to return. Her eyes focused. She looked up at her mother, then at the kind face of Officer Mitchell, then around at the circle of dogs surrounding her. "Mommy," she whispered. "I'm here, baby. You're okay. You're going to be okay." Emma's gaze fixed on Bear, the German Shepherd who had found her backpack. The dog's intelligent eyes watched her calmly. Slowly, Emma reached out her hand. Bear leaned forward and gently licked her fingers. For the first time since the ordeal began, Emma smiled. As Emma recovered, sitting on the floor with a juice box and her mother's arms around her, Jake explained to the security team what had happened. Sarah showed them Emma's medical documentation, though everyone could now see it was clearly a medical emergency, not the situation they had initially feared. "How did you know?" Sarah asked Jake, tears still streaming down her face. "How did you know what was happening when no one else did?" Jake smiled sadly. "My daughter, Lily. She's 10 now, diagnosed 3 years ago with type 1. I've lived this nightmare in my head 1,000 times. I know the signs." He told her about his personal mission to train diabetic alert dogs, about how he'd convinced his department to let him work on the program. "These dogs," he said, gesturing to the circle that still surrounded them, "some of them can smell the chemical changes that happen during a diabetic episode. It's remarkable, really." Sarah looked at the dogs with new wonder. "They saved her life." "They helped," Jake said modestly. "But you're the one who keeps her safe every day. That's the real heroism, what you do every single day as her mom." By the time Emma was fully recovered and paramedics had checked her over to ensure she was stable, the video footage had already started to spread. Travelers who had witnessed the event had posted videos to social media with captions like, "Police dogs protect sick child at airport," and 14 K9s form circle around little girl. Wait until you see why. The images were striking. 14 highly trained police dogs sitting in perfect formation, creating a protective barrier around a small child in a purple unicorn backpack. But it was the story behind the images that captured hearts around the world. A local news crew arrived at the airport within an hour. They interviewed Sarah, who could barely speak through her tears of gratitude. They spoke with Jake, who deflected credit to his team and the dogs. And they got a brief clip of Emma, recovered now, hugging Bear and declaring, "I love dogs!" In the days that followed, Officer Jake Mitchell became something he never sought to be, a viral sensation and genuine hero. But more importantly, his personal project became an official program. The Denver Police Department, moved by the public response and recognizing the value of Jake's work, announced they would formally establish a medical alert dog training program. Jake would lead it, with funding to train dogs specifically for diabetic detection and other medical emergency recognition. "I never did this for recognition," Jake told reporters at a press conference a week later, Emma and Sarah standing beside him, along with Bear and Luna. "I did it because as a father I understand the fear of not being able to protect your child from something invisible. Type 1 diabetes is a 24/7 condition. These kids and their families never get a break. If these dogs can provide even a little extra security, a little extra warning, then every minute I spent training them was worth it." Emma, wearing her medical alert bracelet proudly on the outside of her shirt now, was given the honor of presenting Jake with a special commendation from the Denver mayor. In her small voice, she read from a card her mother had helped her prepare. "Officer Jake and the dogs helped me when I was scared. Now other kids won't have to be as scared as I was. Thank you for being my hero." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. But the story didn't end there. The viral videos and news coverage had an unexpected effect. Suddenly, people around the country were talking about type 1 diabetes in a way they never had before. Parents reached out to Sarah to ask questions about the condition. Schools began implementing better diabetes management protocols. And across the country, other K9 units began reaching out to Jake to learn about his training methods. Within 3 months, Jake had been invited to speak at conferences, to consult with other police departments, and to help develop standardized training protocols for medical alert dogs in public safety roles. A GoFundMe campaign started by a stranger who'd seen the video raised over $300,000 for diabetes research and for funding medical alert dogs for families who couldn't afford them. The campaign was called Emma's Circle, named for the circle of dogs that had protected her. Jake donated his entire speaking fee from his first national television interview to the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation in Emma's name. 6 months after the incident at Denver International Airport, Sarah and Emma returned to the same terminal. This time, they weren't there to fly anywhere. They were there for a ceremony. The airport was dedicating a new medical assistance station near the security checkpoints, equipped with emergency supplies for diabetics and other medical conditions. On the wall was a large photograph of Emma surrounded by the circle of dogs, with a plaque that read, "Emma's Circle Medical Station, because every traveler deserves dignity and care." But there was another surprise waiting. Jake approached them with a young German shepherd on a leash, Bear's son, trained by Jake himself over the past 6 months. "Emma," Jake said, kneeling down to her level, "I'd like you to meet Scout. He's been training to be a diabetic alert dog. And if it's okay with your mom, he's going to be your dog." Emma's eyes went wide. Sarah gasped, her hand covering her mouth. "Jake, we can't. That's too much." "Sarah, you've become an advocate. You've shared Emma's story to help other families. You've volunteered with our program. This isn't charity. You've earned this." He smiled. "Besides, Scout chose Emma. From the first day I brought him to meet you, he's been tuned into her. It's like he knew he was meant to protect her." Emma dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around Scout, who licked her face and wagged his tail so hard his entire back end wiggled. "Hi, Scout," she whispered. "I love you already." At the ceremony, when asked to speak, Jake kept his remarks brief. "I'm not a hero," he said simply. "I'm a dad who loves his daughter and who saw another little girl who needed help. The real heroes are the families living with type 1 diabetes every day, counting carbs and checking blood sugar and staying strong through the hard nights. I just did what any decent person would do. I paid attention, and I cared." He paused, looking at Emma, who stood on stage with Scout sitting perfectly beside her. "But if this story has taught me anything, it's that we're all connected. One person's pain can become another person's purpose, and sometimes the thing that breaks your heart can become the thing that opens it wider than you ever thought possible. When my daughter was diagnosed, I thought it was the worst thing that could happen. But it led me here. It led me to training these incredible dogs. It led me to meet families like Emma's. It led me to a deeper sense of purpose than I'd ever known. So maybe," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "maybe our struggles aren't just obstacles. Maybe they're invitations to become more compassionate, more aware, more willing to help." The audience erupted in applause. "So what's the real story here? Is it about 14 police dogs surrounding a little girl?" "Yes, but it's so much more than that. It's about a father who turned his pain into purpose. It's about a mother who found strength in her weakest moment. It's about a little girl who taught everyone around her about courage. It's about the power of training, preparation, and paying attention to the people around us. But most of all, it's about this. We all have the capacity to be heroes. We don't need capes or special powers. We just need to care enough to act when someone needs help." Officer Jake Mitchell didn't have superpowers. He just had empathy, experience, and the willingness to use what he'd learned from his own struggles to help someone else. That's all heroism really is: showing up, paying attention, and choosing compassion over indifference. Today, Emma is thriving. She's 8 years old now, an advocate for type 1 diabetes awareness, and she speaks at schools with Scout by her side, teaching other kids that having a medical condition doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. Sarah has become a volunteer trainer in Jake's expanded Medical Alert Dog program, using her experience to help other families navigate life with type 1 diabetes. And Jake? He continues to train dogs, lead his program, and occasionally patrol Denver International Airport, where travelers sometimes recognize him and thank him for his service. But his favorite moments are the quiet ones. Watching Lily and Emma play together at diabetes support group meetings, their medical alert dogs playing beside them. 2 girls who don't have to be afraid because people cared enough to prepare, to train, to act. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us of the good in humanity. And if you or someone you love has type 1 diabetes, know that you're not alone. There are Officer Mitchells out there, people who care, who will help, who will surround you with their own circle of protection when you need it most. Leave a comment below telling me about a time when someone showed up for you when you needed it most. Let's celebrate the everyday heroes walking among us. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to get through this life together, and sometimes all it takes is one person, or 14 loyal dogs, to remind us that we're never truly alone. Thank you for watching. And remember, be kind, pay attention, and never underestimate the power of showing up for someone in their moment of need. Until next time.